All right, and welcome back to Alternative Discussion West, the podcast. We are here on episode 17. This is your host, Ryan Banks. I want to welcome you back to the show. Thank you guys for tuning in and sharing. Of course, you can find us on iTunes and YouTube, and we're having a great time bringing in all our guests from around the Bay Area and getting some interesting stories. Today, I have another friend of mine here from the Bay Area Underground. I want to introduce to you Mr. Rob Green. How you doing, Rob?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Right on, man. Thanks for coming out, making the trek, from Oakland out here to our humble abode.
It's beautiful.
We appreciate you coming out. So you were saying you grew up all throughout your life, been here in the Bay Area for the majority.
That's correct.
And you were born in Fremont.
I was born in beautiful Redwood City, California, originally.
Yeah. Not bad, huh?
Yeah, and then my dad used to make maps for the Geological Survey in Menlo Park.
A man of topography.
That's correct. He's a topographer, yeah. Exactly right. That's a good word. Like a lot of people, I was like, oh, he was a topographer, and they're all, what?
So who did he work for doing that?
USGS. Yeah,
Very
the
cool.
US Geological Service, yeah. He was in the earthquake building too. He was like actually next door to the earthquake building there.
Really?
So that was pretty cool.
And he just made local maps, or he made maps from all over?
He made maps for the United States. They would start at one end and they'd work their way across. They'd make stereo maps in this big, crazy, stereo map machine.
Really? And he did that as his career?
That was his job, yeah. 50
really?
years. He did 50 years doing that jam.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was cool.
Is there still a topography field out there?
There is. They don't do it in Menlo Park anymore. They moved everybody to Denver. And then it was funny when he retired, they closed the building.
That he was in it, retired with him?
Yeah, basically. And then Google hit him up for Google Maps, and I was like, sick, go for it.
And
he's like super crazy honest.
I've already hung up the hat.
I'm gonna go do other stuff. He was super honest and it was weird. He was kind of naive, and you don't know your dad's naive until you're a grown up,
But he served his time.
Yeah, and he just he felt like working for Google and getting a bunch of money basically for the thing he'd been doing for peanuts his whole life felt like getting something for nothing.
Yeah.
He was like super honest. So it's like, oh, that's weird.
I can't rip off Google here.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't want to get paid that much to do something I already know how to do. That sounds weird. So yeah, so that was my dad in a nutshell.
Definitely an interesting career though.
Yeah, for sure. And we originally, he and my mom both grew up in Albany, right outside of Berkeley, and then they met when they were teenagers, and then he was right out of the Air Force, so that's what he learned to do in the Air Force. He did a bunch of aerial photography and stuff like that, and then just got a job right with the government right out of the Air Force, and they bought this crappy little house in Fremont in 1960,
and that's where it all began.
That's where it all started. Beautiful Fremont, California. It's basically like this shitty little cardboard house in the middle of a field.
Do they still own that home?
My dad is gone. My mom lives in a retirement community not too far away, and my sister actually lives in that house now.
Okay, so it's still in the family.
It's still in the family. She built on it like my whole life. She built on it sort of like Sarah Winchester,
Sure.
Like, there's like no backyard
weird
left.
Weird doors.
It's all house.
Yeah.
It was like, weird stairwells to nowhere,
Windows that don't have a view.
Yeah, you open them up to bricks. Yeah, exactly.
All that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you go to all your proper grammar school there in Fremont.
Yeah, we went. I grew up there. My brother and my sister and I. My brother is 9 years older. My sister's 12 years older. And we just kind of, that was our world. You could walk to school. You could, just the classic 70s and 80s sort of, just Northern California.
Kind of a suburban town.
Yeah, just suburban, kind of far enough away from the city that when you went to the city on the rare occasion on BART, it was like kind of a huge deal. I'd visit
It still meant something.
Yeah, totally. It was like exciting. But I'd go to my grandma and grandpa's house. Both sets of grandparents lived for a long time when I was a kid. So, excuse me. So we'd go and visit, I'd jump on BART and we'd ride up to the North Berkeley BART station, and my grandma would walk over and pick us up. Because they live still like right on. My mom lived on the corner of Hopkins and Gilman, and then my dad lived over off of on San Lorenzo, sort of off, kind of in the backside of Albany, like on the hill there.
Okay, and their parents had kind of hung on to those homes.
Yeah, they just had houses. My mom's grandparents, they were from my mom's parents. Her mom was from Atlanta, Georgia. And then her dad was the son of a judge from South Dakota, and they moved out here in the Dust Bowl time. And
Very interesting.
Yeah, it was a trip. And then my dad's dad was the son of a railroad baron. They were super rich until the what do you call it? The Great Depression. They lost all their money.
What railroad line was it?
I'm not sure. Northern Pacific, I think.
Really?
Yeah, they were like railroad barons. They lived on Lake Merritt.
And they did well, huh? And
They
the
did
railroad
okay,
boom
and then
many
they
years
all
ago.
went to jail.
Yeah,
They all went to jail, actually.
there was a dark history inside
There
those
was. It
railroads,
was pretty
wasn't
gnarly. Yeah, it was crazy. They went to jail for tax evasion during the Depression. So,
there?
yeah.
And there went the fortune, huh?
Shady. Yeah. And then they just bought a crappy little house in Albany, which turned out to be, a $1 trillion house.
Yeah.
In Albany.
They had a master plan
It's
after all.
exactly the same. It's just worth a lot more money.
So what was growing up in Fremont like to you?
Boring, you
Yeah.
know, just kind of boring. You just you got a bicycle or a skateboard and you just try to make the best of it. And you got the hell out of there as
Early
fast
on,
as
you met
possibly
friends?
Can. Yeah, of course. You find your people. You find the weirdos and stuff. Like, I didn't really know anything. And I got my brother, luckily, he was a lot older than me. So he was always really into cool stuff before I was. Like, he got into music really early on. And
So that's your introduction to kind of punk
Yeah.
rock and maybe the underground.
yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, he was really into a lot of great stuff. My very first show ever, I was really into music. He got me into music before that. He's a really good drummer. So he would set up a record player next to the drum set. So I
And just jam away.
Yeah, and I really was into it. He was really into the Cars, like the Cars' first record. So he always jammed to that record. So I would get into it too when he wasn't around. I'd jump on the drum set and put these big cool headphones on and learned how to play drums that way. And the Police, early Police.
And he was playing in bands also when you were young?
Yeah, he did a lot of that kind of stuff of just local stuff. He was really into the really first gen U2. That was really big, but it wasn't actually that big. He went
So kind of alternative rock.
Yeah, exactly right. But he was also really into the Who. He was really into Rush because it had a good drummer. He was into the drummer band.
And Neil Peart.
Yeah, exactly. So he was just into that kind of stuff. He did a little stint with King Crimson and kind of more math,
psychedelic,
proggy kind of mathy stuff because it was just kind of different. But he was really into the stuff that he introduced me to was more of just the pre-punk stuff, the Who and the Kinks and all that stuff. That was my very first show, actually. He dragged me to a show.
Straightforward rock and roll.
Yeah, when I was 10, we went to see the Who and the Clash at the Cow Palace.
Wow. You were 10 years old.
I was. I went deaf. I got out of there and I couldn't hear anything and I thought I was in trouble. I was oh shit, I can't hear anything.
Were you guys up front or was it just that loud?
No, it was just super loud.
The Cow
We were
Palace,
pretty close. My brother dragged me down. I was like, oh my God. I just remember the Clash. Just
wow.
I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that people could do that.
Yeah. You were familiar with the records even at that time?
Kinda, but not really.
You
growing
were
up,
seeing rock and roll live for your first time.
Yeah, I'd never really seen that before. I didn't know that's what that was. You know what I mean? I didn't know it had
Listening
that
to it is one thing.
Sure.
But then showing up.
I didn't know it had that kind of power.
Sure, and
even
watching
now.
the audience.
Right. And just the first time you ever hear somebody blast a guitar or hear a bass drum on that level of sound with that clarity but with that volume, it's unreal. It makes you feel like you can fly. That's how I felt the first time I heard that. Right,
so you were ignited as soon as you heard it.
Totally,
you were alive.
I'm kind of scared and kind of worried that I was I'm not doing my homework. I was super nerdy, so I'm I'm gonna get in trouble for not doing my homework.
This is on a school night you're there? Do you remember?
It was a Tuesday or something. Right.
At the Cow Palace.
Yeah.
You're seeing the Clash.
Yeah, it was so great. And the Who played, and I don't even really remember the Who playing because they were Keith Moon had already died, and he was kind of my hero, but, and it just wasn't the same. And it was kind of cheesy.
Maybe not even the same energy.
Yeah, it just was kind of cheesy. The Clash mopped the floor with them. I could tell that by, even then, I was no, those guys.
You knew who took the show.
These kids are hungry. They even though it was a giant arena and probably, now I know it was sort of towards the end of their career, they had done a lot more kind of quote-unquote punk stuff before that.
And they'd certainly arrived in America.
Yeah, they were playing a lot of the weirdo, kind of Sandinista. They played a bunch of, the slower reggae jams and stuff, which I was still enthralled with, kind of confused by, but still pretty enthralled. It was still pretty great, but I just remember the raw just the rawness of it and the energy and the volume, and I just couldn't get enough. And then we went and saw the Kinks like 2 weeks later.
At the same venue?
No, it was somewhere else, like the Circle Star. Do you remember the Circle Star Theater? It was this venue in San Mateo, and it was in the round, and like they'd sit on the stage and it would spin.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was really cool, and like you could just sit there and the act would very slowly spin around. It was really neat.
So everyone had a decent seat, huh?
Yeah, it was really cool, and it was, again, loud as hell. That band Scandal opened, and then it was the Kinks, and it was same thing. It was like, holy shit.
So 10 years old, you've seen the Clash, you've seen the Kinks,
yeah,
you've seen the Who.
I was set. I could have died. I was set.
That was
in the ground. I'm good.
And you're already playing drums at that age.
I was trying.
At least experimenting.
I was trying. Yeah, it was actually pretty funny. My brother, I picked it up pretty good, and my brother was really excited, and he got me a practice pad set for my birthday, and he got me a bunch of lessons at this really horrible suburban, music spot, and
I mean, lessons that young should be really beneficial. You would think.
Agreed.
They weren't.
But it was just like one of those guys who was kind of blown out. Like, I used to play drums in Greg Kinn's band or something. He was just some douchebag, and he was really over it.
He was on the county fair circuit.
Yeah, dude, and he hated me. There was just something about me and him. We just did not get along, and I really loved playing songs. Like I really I just
jamming along to a good
the
song.
Fundamentals. Like I want to play the Police. Like I was obsessed with the Police when I was younger. And I'm all, look what I can do. He's like, that's nothing. You need to learn your fundamentals and this and that. Fundamentals to me were so boring. And there were papers.
Was not connecting with you.
Practice on the paper. What's on the paper? So then finally we just came to this agreement. There was this really great arcade next door. And so I would just go to the arcade, and he wouldn't tell anybody that I wouldn't go to lessons. And then
so you'd sit there for an hour and play games.
Yeah, and then my mom would come and pick me up I would go in, they'd drop me off, I'd go in, I'd look at the music and the drums and stuff. It was like an old school suburban music store. It's pretty big. It's called Allegro Music in Fremont. It's still probably there. But and
you'd get dropped off for your drum lesson.
Yeah, and then, mom or dad would take off. I'd zip over to I'd see the guy and it'd be all high five. Yeah, all right, bro, later. And I'd go in. So then
an hour.
Yeah, and then they would keep paying him. Like, I didn't know. I mean, whatever.
Was he giving you money to go play at the arcade?
No. I just had it, from mowing lawns. And
sure, you had a couple bucks for the
dollar saved, the dollar saver paper route. Or even if I didn't have any money, I just would go over to the arcade and watch the local hero.
Hearing him talk the fundamentals.
Yeah, kill it at Qbert or whatever. Yeah, so finally, of course, that we all got caught eventually. I can't remember
sure,
exactly
after a few
what happened. But
sure,
yeah, somebody fucked something up, and then...
but all along you're playing on the kit at home.
Yeah.
You're jamming along to the songs.
Yeah, actually my brother got mad at me about that. We got caught, and so he took the drum set away as like a punishment.
Yeah.
So then I would just play his drums when he wasn't home. And then he moved away. He was a lot older than me, so he moved away, and then...
You get into high school.
I got into high school, and I got more into guitar then.
Okay, so you pick up a guitar
also. He had a guitar, and then he went away. He went to Finland. He followed some girl to Finland, and he left a bunch of his stuff. He left me his record collection and his guitar.
Now, is it an electric guitar or acoustic?
It was an acoustic, but it just was like, oh, cool, let me try this out. This is way more portable. That was my thing.
Yeah.
I was a lazy ass from the beginning. Like, I don't want to haul this stuff around.
Drums to and from and practice every week.
Oh, this is lame ass. Yeah, and so the guitar was a lot more fun. And plus, it was it's kind of more of the ego stroke, you're way out front and stuff, not just, playing the tennis racket in front of the mirror when you're a little kid. You're like, oh, this is so much cooler.
I can handle this one.
Yeah, the only cool drummer to me was Keith Moon and Neil Peart, because they were sort of the thing. But the thing about Neil Peart that sucked is you just had to haul all that stuff around,
Oh, yeah, you had the gong.
Oh, yeah, you had the whole deal, the timbales everywhere. It was ridiculous. You had a truck to haul all your shit around.
So once you get the acoustic guitar, you're listening to his record collection. What songs are you playing along to when it comes to the guitar?
A lot of just stuff I'd never heard of before. He had actually a really cool record collection. A lot of stuff that was alternative import stuff that Live 105 was actually playing in the 80s back in the day when it was more of a college rock
Steve
station.
Masters or before that time?
Yeah,
wow,
Steve Masters and Big Rick Stewart and stuff.
Yeah, early DJs.
Yeah,
there.
so it would be Britpop stuff, a lot of that stuff. I got really into that stuff. I was super into the Red Rockets and New Order even, and a little bit of the Cure, the Smiths. We're kind of, that was new.
So the Britpop, the new wave,
a lot of new wave stuff, Psychedelic Furs, all that stuff. And then this kid Jamil in 6th grade, he was a skater. He was like the first skater I ever met, and him and his brother were really good. And they both had Hosoi Hammerhead decks, and I was like, oh man, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And they would have Thrashers.
The pinnacle of cool.
Yeah, and they'd have Thrashers, and in Thrasher, back in the 80s, Thrasher was half skateboards, half punk rock. That was like a ton of page space was dedicated to the music that went along with skating.
Yeah.
Because Caballero was all part of Faction, and, it was a whole deal, like DI and, Dead Kennedys and all those bands.
A lot of the SoCal bands.
Yep. Yeah, and there was the Dead Kennedys, and there was some NorCal bands like the Avengers and stuff, but mostly it was these like rad like skate bands. And I went from the kind of soft Britpop stuff to that. Like I jumped to that. I was like, oh, this.
That's right. Skateboarding was the gateway to that.
Yeah, I feel this. And then I would go back and forth. Like as I went into junior high and high school, I would just kind of go back and forth between the two. I never really had a home. And then this girl, she was really cool. She showed up out of nowhere. She was a British, like exchange student. And she looked exactly like Susie Sue.
And she was going to your high school.
She landed smack in the middle of Fremont. People were just like, what the fuck is this?
Like an alien had landed.
I was instantly like, oh, okay. I know what this is. This is cool. I've seen this before.
And then you had someone to connect with that on that
Correct,
music.
yeah. And she had a bunch of cool stuff. Like she had all kinds of crazy British import stuff. She had like, and a weird American stuff that she would get.
That you've never heard.
Yeah, in the record stores in England. Just like, or just weird stuff for the 80s, like Skinny Puppy and, all this kind of gothy, like post-punk stuff that also was interesting to me. It didn't get me going like some of the other more rock and roll stuff, but it was still cool and it was still stuff I was interested in. Even some of the older Cure stuff. You know what I mean? That stuff was all really new then. Like nobody really listened to that stuff.
Yeah, it's still really interesting and intricate when you listen to it.
Go to the old stuff. Like the first Cure record is really, it's super, it's not even really post-punk. It's still just kind of punk. It's just sort of garagey and like rowdy.
Lo-fi rock.
Yeah, it's real rowdy. So I don't know. I just got into that, and that sort of just, that's what kind of got me rolling.
So you're listening to the skate bands, you're getting introduced through Thrasher and some locals around town. Now, when do you make a connection to some of the punk bands playing? You've already seen the big bands, you've went to the arenas.
Right. So like smaller shows and stuff, when I got into high school.
Were there bands from your high school? Was there kids playing music?
They were mostly playing like stoner rock stuff, like Zeppelin and shit like that. And like
big arena rock.
The very first people I ever played with, we actually played this kid. He was this rich kid. His dad was a gangster. As a Chinese importer, he was a gangster. We didn't know that at the time. He lived by himself in his own house.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. But his dad was an importer, quote unquote. But he imported fireworks and guns and shit.
Did well in the business.
Yeah, so he... But he could play Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. He could play the lead guitar parts front to back.
Everything.
The whole record. So I was like, that's cool. He was like kind of the only guy I could play with. So I just like learned that record and played that with him and stuff. And then these other dudes I met, these skater kids that I'd always kind of seen, they were always wearing like 7 Seconds patches and Subhumans patches. And this was right in like the end of junior high, right at the beginning of high school.
Late 80s.
Yeah, and I had seen some Subhumans and stuff like that in Thrasher, but this was all kind of slightly newer. Like, and they were still around. Like, a lot of those first-gen bands were kind of gone, or they were, like, the first version of them had gone away.
Sure, yeah.
And they were going to come back later, but nobody knew that. They were just kind of gone. But then all of a sudden, there was, like, the straight-edge stuff. There was, like, Youth of Today. There was, Bouncing Souls and 7 Seconds and all that. And those guys were still playing. You could go see them.
Yeah, and they had current records out.
So that was sick. So, cool. And so I hooked up with those guys. I kind of bailed on the Guns N' Roses dude. And we started playing, like, just punk. That was our thing. We're like, oh, cool, punk. I found my punk kids. We're great. So we started doing that in high school. And then I was the first one to drive. My birthday's in December. So I was the first kid to drive. I was a little older than everybody
the early
else.
License.
Yeah, so we piled into the California Orange Volvo 244. And we'd hit Gilman. And that was when Gilman was like really kind of doing its thing.
And this is like right at the end of the 80s.
Op Ivy and Crimp Shrine and all that stuff. We didn't know it was like epic. We know it's epic now, but then it was just what you did.
Was it full?
Not always.
No. It might be 100 people there, cool. 50 people.
Yeah. I mean, it was like you know, it just like it is now. Like,
Sure.
I mean, a little.
Some nights it's jumping. Some
nights you get there and like it's like nobody got the phone call.
Yeah.
You know, and there was no Craigslist or email or.
And you've still got
Facebook
5 great bands playing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like 5 bands that maybe were just starting. You know, I mean, Monsula had to play once, right? And they played there once, you know, and they were terrible probably. I don't know. Maybe I was there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like
a lot of these bands starting out or early on.
Yeah. And even Op Ivy was like pretty sloppy. I mean, it was basically they just were there to make their friends happy. And they did. And it was awesome. It was super fun. And there was a lot of bands like Mr. T. Like Mr. T was always really good. They always like killed it. And Tilt was really, you know, there was always like Green Day, Tilt, Mr. T, Monsula, all those bands.
And that could be going on every month.
Yeah, and there was tons of touring bands. There was always a couple of touring bands that, you know, would later on just go off to do stuff that was really cool. And sometimes there would be, that was also right when the weird like funk punk thing was sort of starting. So every now and then like something like that would come through with a horn section. And that was always kind of cool though. It was like, it wasn't popular
And you
yet.
guys were just going along to Gilman every weekend you could?
Every time we could. We wouldn't always make it. I wouldn't always have gas money. Maybe I had to work. I was like a douchey kid with a douchey job, so like I didn't, you know, I had to work on the weekends.
Once a month you were there.
Sure, easily, maybe twice a month. My grandparents lived there, so like right on the other side of the of Gilman.
So you were
Street.
familiar with the area.
So I could crash there if I needed to. And especially once my grandparents moved on, my brother moved into that house, and then it was on like Donkey Kong after that. I don't know if you remember, there used to be a club also called Berkeley Square that was on University, so we'd go see a lot of shows there too. There was a lot of great shows there. Stuff that maybe didn't end up at Gilman for one reason or another. I saw NoFX there a bunch of times, and I saw
sometimes had a little bigger audience.
Yeah, and like stuff Fire Hose. I saw them one time there. It was really great. So
yeah, I remember seeing a lot of flyers, the Primus or the Deftones there.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
like stuff that wouldn't necessarily
Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, it wouldn't be just like punk bands.
Yeah,
or they'd kind of do other stuff, and they were always really great. You know, like Skank and Pickle played there a bunch of times. Cool stuff like that maybe wouldn't always play Gilman. And Gilman's always had sort of like, Gilman's really great, and it's very much like high school. You know, there's some divisive stuff that goes on occasionally, and there's some politics and stuff. And a lot of times, especially like after I sort of grew up and was able to sort of buy beer and stuff like that, you sort of feel that feeling of graduation. So I kind of always preferred to go to like a bar or something. It just felt better to me a little bit. I felt I was really shy when we'd go to Gilman, so I never really engaged. I feel stupid for that now because that's kind of what it's for, but I was just never that outgoing when I was a kid, and so I was always
until you matured a little.
Yeah, totally. I was still kind of in my shell, and occasionally I would just go with one friend. Like only one kid could go out. Like somebody got grounded because their grades were shitty or whatever. So on those nights, I wouldn't talk to anybody. I'd just be like, oh, God.
Just be you there alone.
Yeah, I'd be really scared and stuff. And I volunteered a couple times, and that always was pretty cool. You know, cleaned up if I didn't have a couple bucks to get in or whatever. And
so and helped out with the staff there.
And everybody was really nice. Like, everybody was really, really, really cool. And even then, I was kind of into motorcycles, so sometimes I'd ride my motorcycle up all the way from Fremont, and that was a little sketchy because we never really had anything that big or that reliable.
Yeah.
But I would connect with people that way. I've always sort of connected with people that way too. Like
Sure. So we're getting into you graduate in high school. You've discovered Gilman.
Mm-hmm.
You've been to the shows at the Berkeley Square. You volunteered at Gilman.
Right.
You've done quite a bit there. So we're going to take our first break here. We're going to come back, kind of talk about you getting into playing music.
Okay, cool.
Playing in bands out here. And then kind of talk about you moving into San Francisco and then actually relocating from the Bay for a little while.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back to talk to Rob a little bit more.
Cool.
right, and what you just heard was Gravy Dog Doorstop by the Heromakers. Well, walk us through that band, man.
That was so actually originally.
This is fresh out of high school?
No, not quite. So, right out of high school, I moved to San Francisco. My brother, like I said, was older. He had a place in the Haight for a long time, and if you grew up in Fremont, you did one of two things. Well, you did one of three things. You either moved to San Francisco, you stayed in Fremont for a million years, or you did what a lot of my friends did back in the day. Like they would be like, "Oh no, San Jose is cool." And most people,
because you're kind of the in between.
Yeah, you're like right in between. You're actually closer to San Jose if you're in Fremont. So I just knew that was kind of bullshit. Like I'd tried to join bands like
in San Jose
out of high school. Yeah, there was like a couple of like. They would like be like, we're a punk band. You get down there and they had like a DJ and they were like trying to do like rap rock and shit. And it was like pretty terrible.
But nothing drew you to San Jose.
No, it was really boring and dumb. It was horrible. I could just tell. And you go to the city and the city was electric. Like San Francisco was just on fire, electric all the time.
And this is early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah, it was like late 80s. This is early 90s. This is right after I graduated from high school. So
you get to San Francisco, you get your own place out there.
Yeah, that's what you did. It was cool. You just would go and like get a couple of your knuckleheaded friends together and you'd roll around. I remember we rolled around. We wanted to live in the Mission. I moved in with my friends in Nob Hill, and we were all messaging at the time, and that was just too much hill climbing at the end of a day, because we were way up on the top of Nob Hill.
And you're just running everywhere.
Like, no way. There's like stairs cut into the sidewalk. Like,
and that's kind of where that song came from, was being a bike messenger in San Francisco.
Yeah, it was like the first month I worked, I just got doored on Battery Street coming back from Levi's. It's like some dude opened up his Miata door and I like knocked
and you just crushed it.
Crashed right into it. Yeah, knocked it off. My leg is still fucked up from that. But
oh man.
Yeah, so that was the thing. You just moved to the city and you got some kind of crappy job. You either got a job, slinging coffee or bike messaging was a thing. Like that was a whole deal. You could make a bunch of money, or not a bunch, but enough to be happy.
To rent a place and
go
buy
out and have some fun. Have beers and buy a guitar, a guitar center, and play music and high five your friends and go to the beach and have a motorcycle. My parallel thing was like I was always into motorcycles and I was always into punk rock, and I've always been able to connect with people through both of those things, and oftentimes through both of those things at the same time.
The worlds cross paths.
Yeah, big time. Because it's kind of a thing, like the outlaw biker thing, and then especially in San Francisco, there's like 10 different categories of motorcyclists, and if maybe more. And one of them is just the total like rat bike punk rock kid who's because it's cheap transpo. If you're a broke ass, that's the best way to get back and forth to shows to Berkeley and Oakland if you live in the city, or vice versa, or like maybe up to Petaluma, randomly to the Phoenix or something. If somebody really cool was coming through and played something kind of big, we'll ride up to the Phoenix or whatever.
Is there something also that might connect? I don't ride a motorcycle, but you're kind of an outcast already, involved in this punk scene, and now who's riding it? You're riding it on your own,
right? Exactly.
And you don't got to bring anyone, right? You've got an excuse just to kind of be out there.
Yeah.
You're going your own way.
Well, and it's dangerous, and it's like bums your mom out and all that. It's like everything the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just like they're loud.
Scares all your loved ones.
They're
loud,
it's loud and like leaky and smells bad.
So it actually has a lot in common with loud music, punk rock,
it's very
loud engine.
Yeah, it's a very punk vehicle. That's
and
like
everyone
the punkest
asks you,
vehicle.
are you still riding that thing?
Yeah, it's dangerous. Lose your limbs at any moment.
So you love it. So you move in. Where do you live in San Francisco?
So we moved to originally, I just spent a couple weeks with my buddies on Nob Hill, and then we moved into a flat on Guerrero Street at 16th.
Okay.
And then it was like the hood. It was really scary then, but it was like, I loved it.
Yeah.
And it was like, and we looked at this building. There's this big building.
And you guys are all messengers?
Two of us were, and the other one was a scientist, actually. Okay. He worked at UCSF, but punk rock scientist. And, and it was a really great time. We had a lot of our friends were moving out. I was through my roommates and through music and stuff, I was connected with these people that all were the sort of elite, like artistic children of famous artists from New York. And they were all graduating from Oberlin and Sarah Lawrence and all these kind of art schools in the Midwest and the East Coast.
Kind of prominent schools.
Yeah, and they were all moving out to San Francisco to sort of sow their wild oats for a couple years until they would go back to the East Coast,
find themselves out
get
in
their
the
shit
city
together,
and,
and go get jobs at NPR and things like that,
Wherever
you know,
it was,
or become famous artists or whatever. So that's kind of. But I was luckily enough, I just was like right place, right time,
and kind of cross paths with all these people.
Yeah, they were my roommates' girlfriends and friends and buddies and stuff. And then I ended up making lifelong friends with these amazing artists,
really talented people.
Yeah, that are, you know, sort of like. There's nothing. I mean. I'm not bragging about the fame of them or whatever, but it was just like interesting. Famous artists, a lot of times if they become famous, it's for a reason. It's because they work really hard, and it's just like, you know, to become.
They've got a different message inside of their art.
Either that, or like, you know, they're smart enough and they're good enough at their art to be world renowned, and they get, you know, when the lightning strikes, they're ready.
Yeah.
You know, they're legitimate and they have their thing going and it's cool. And
they know the business aspect of it. And
yeah.
How to make it work.
Yeah. But also their art's good, right?
Yeah.
Like they're pros and they know what's up. And then, so the cool thing about that is sometimes there's these scenes that happen and they're all over the place. They happen in New York. Sometimes I'm sure they probably happened in Columbus, Ohio when Devo was around, you know,
Sure.
There's these scenes where they just end up becoming epicenters of art, and it's
a lot of talented people around.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence that like amazing art comes out of those like crazy great bands, and you know, people who, you know, like make great T-shirts or whatever it is, you know, whatever.
So you
the
felt a
outlet is.
buzz inside of San Francisco.
Absolutely.
You felt an excitement for art.
Yeah, like early
culture, everything.
Late '80s, early '90s was a real hotbed for that. So
where are you going to shows at?
All over the place. I lived at 16th and Guerrero, so I kind of had sort of graduated quote unquote from the East Bay scene a little bit, and San Francisco was a little bit different.
It was a whole lot different than what was going on at Gilman.
Yeah, it was a little more mature. You could drink, you know, you could, and not to say it's better, it just was different, and there was a lot of more. It was a little more artsy fartsy in a lot of ways. You know, the music was different. You kind of had to open your mind a little bit more. It wasn't just the same. Kind of everybody was.
It wasn't
sort of,
as accessible. It was,
and it was. Everybody was a little bit worn out on the pop punk thing by then. It was
sure,
kinda, you know. So
it had blown up at this point.
Yeah, and so, but the cool thing about it was, some people who really like, you know, like Mr. T, never quite got their due in my opinion. You know, they wrote really great songs and stuff, and they became kind of.
They worked
big.
hard for a long time.
They did, yeah, and they just, you know, but you know, when the standard bearer is Green Day and they're just like going to the moon. It's hard for a lot of the other bands. A lot of people, you know, felt like kind of got left behind. You know,
not everyone could live up to that gold standard.
Yeah, and there's, you know, so that was sort of the environment. So if you went to San Francisco, it was a different world. And it was only 10 miles away, but it was a little darker. It was a little more gritty. It was a little more heavy duty.
And to you, it felt more adult. You're growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, ironically, at that time, it was funny because I played drums and guitar. So I was playing drums in these bands and kind of grungy, like grunge was kind of happening a little bit too, which is sort of weird. So it was a little grungy. I was kind of playing some, you know, this band, that band, whatever. And then I don't know if you remember BAM magazine, which was like the free music magazine that was floating around.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, there was like a thing you could just go, and there was no Craigslist or internet then, so that was just how you.
That's where you do.
That's where you connected with other musicians. Yeah, there'd be articles and there was really cool stuff, and then there was always really good ads. And I answered an ad in the back of BAM magazine for the Parasites, and I had seen them at shows, and they wrote really good songs and stuff. They were
pop.
Yeah, they were like pop punk. Yeah,
sure.
The records were really poppy, but live they were a lot heavier for some reason.
A lot more edge to them.
Yeah,
live.
It was just the way they were produced. They just their records came out real soft and kind of. That always actually the Nicky Parasite. That used to bum him out.
That wasn't his intention. Going into the studio to sound like that.
No,
he couldn't capture the live sound.
He just wouldn't. It just didn't. Or he was a big Misfits fan, and he kind of like some of the early Parasite stuff was kind of Misfitsy, and he's like kind of into the Queers and stuff. So actually, the Queers and the Parasites sort of started at the same time. He had started in New Jersey, like way, way, way back in the '80s, and moved out to Berkeley.
And then you see this ad in BAM magazine.
Yeah, and I had seen them open for Face to Face actually at Gilman one night. It was one of the rare times I went back over.
And you saw the Parasites with Face to Face.
Yeah, and they were like, "Hey, Parasites looking for guitarists. They're looking for a second guitarist." I'm like, "Oh, cool." So this is right when I kind of moved to the city. I'd started college, and then
you were going to SF State.
I was going to SF State. anthro degree, bike messaging, just kind of living the dream, really not making any money, but
sewing your own also.
Having a blast, though, just having the best time of my life. Not really knowing that. I know that
having
now.
no clue.
Yeah, right? So, but that's how it goes,
Yeah.
So I joined them for
And that's a phone call. You call and you get a hold of Nikki.
And we just kind of hook up and we start playing and it's cool. And at the time they had this other bass player guy who since actually I figured out is actually really cool, but I didn't really get along with him at the time. And so I quit like right away.
Now the Parasites are rehearsing out of San Francisco?
No, they're rehearsing at the small Soundwave studios over in Temescal.
Okay.
So Soundwave owns the really big one in West Oakland. They own OMC also, which is where we practice. And then they also they own this little kind of weird shady one in Temescal, which back in the day was a little bit sketchy. Like I almost got mugged a bunch of times.
And that's where you were jamming with them. But you quit after a few.
I quit after a few times. I had just
a few practices.
Yeah, and I was kind of playing with other people in the city, and I joined a surf band. I was playing drums in a surf band. I almost started playing drums in Shotwell, which was like kind of like this kind of crusty band in the city.
Yeah.
And then my brother joined them actually.
Oh, really?
There used to be this band called Strawman, which sounded very jawbreakery, and then Strawman broke up, and out of Strawman became Shotwell.
Okay.
And then I was gonna.
Your brother took your job in that band.
Yeah, it wasn't really. It wasn't really a thing I was gonna do. It was just like everybody played with everybody. It was like kind of cool. But anyway. So I started playing with the Parasites. I quit after a cook because I didn't really like the bass player at the time. I won't mention his name because he's still kind of around. He writes for Maximum. But he ended up being a cool guy, actually. Later I ran into him. But anyway, so then they went on tour without me. They just went on tour as a three-piece with JJ Nobody. And then they came back and we're just like, dude, we need another guitarist.
They reached back out to you.
We know why you didn't go. That guy's not in the band anymore. Come play with us. I'm like, okay, cool. So then Jason Duncan, who became, he's one of my best friends now, lifelong friend. He came out from North Carolina, played bass, and we jumped out on tour. We did a whole, U.S. tour. We started here, went down to L.A., went across the bottom, up to the top, through the South, and then up to, East Coast, and back along 80.
And that's with the Parasites
as a four-piece. As a four-piece. And
what kind of shows are you playing?
The first
you got big venues, or good sound, you're playing small clubs.
Okay, and I had I'd never been on tour before. Up until that point, I'd been playing these really crappy shows.
And warehouse shows and clubs or
that,
bars, if anything.
I don't know. They just, nobody was there. We played Epicenter a couple times. That was really cool because Epicenter was right by my house. The record store, it was this record store on Valencia Street. Kind of epic little record store that... Maximum had a kind of a hand in it, and it was just they would do little shows, and then somebody was swinging from the plumbing one day and broke it open and
sprayed all over
flooded the place, and that was that. Ruined the store downstairs, so they threw him out of there. But
so on this Parasite store, what year is this in?
This would have been 95 or 96.
And you do 30 or 40 dates with them?
Yeah, we did a lot of shows. We did, it was 2 months, and I didn't seem like we even had any days off. It was probably... Just
every night you're playing.
Every night, just middle of nowhere. Great shows. I met some of the most amazing people. We hooked up with Squirt Gun, from Lookout Records.
Played some shows with them?
Yeah, we hooked up with them at Massa Studio. We recorded some songs there. Then we hooked up with them and then came all the way back to the West Coast with them. So that was really fun, and those guys were great. Fell in love.
So you did have a hand in recording some Parasite songs.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, we did a bunch. I had recorded a single or two with them at Dancing Dog, which is where all the Lookout bands recorded before.
So that was a cool experience.
In Emeryville, that was amazing to me. That was oh my god,
you had arrived.
I'm in heaven. Yeah, we recorded this. We recorded Pep Talk too. A Descendants cover. Got to do that.
Had a great time with that.
That was really fun. And we were on a Descendants cover record, and that was actually the highlight of the tour back in the day. Milo was teaching in Wisconsin. He was teaching in Madison. So that you didn't have internet or anything. You just wrote letters to people and called people and had these crazy epic giant phone bills, and you just prayed that the thing that this 14-year-old kid told you was going to happen was actually
show was set up, and there was other bands, and there was a PA.
Yeah,
and there was this.
Yeah, there was plenty of times when there's one time we showed up in El Paso, and it was these two crazy brothers with these giant glasses, and we met them in a giant parking lot, and we go to the venue and it's closed, and we're like, oh, that's cool. And some dude comes rambling up, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" We're like, "Oh, we're here for the show." He's like, "Well, we don't have shows on Thursday night." But then he was cool. He's like, "But okay, you guys can play if you want." And then opened up the venue, and then we called.
And people showed up.
And a bunch of people showed up. Yeah,
wow.
It was pretty great. But that's just how it was. It was really scary. One time we went into this cornfield. We're like, "Holy shit, we're going to our murder right now. This is horrible." But it ended up, this guy, his job was he took pictures for John Deere, and he built this barn. It was a photo set barn, and his kid had
to launch John Deere ads.
Yeah, he would like take pictures. He
and...
had a house, like a really nice house. It was
Yeah.
like a good gig apparently. And then right in the middle of the cornfield, there was like a big barn with photo equipment and everything.
And he had set up a punk show there.
Yeah, and his kid was in a band, was just like really into Screeching Weasel. This was in the era when like every band we played with sounded exactly like Screeching Weasel. Like everybody wanted to be Screeching Weasel. So we'd show up, and this kid, and like a million trillion kids would show up, and they'd pay us a bunch of money and put us up and like crash on the floor.
And it was a great time.
Oh yeah, it was epic. It was epic. But when we got to the Midwest, that's when things really jumped off. Like when we get to Green Bay and Madison and Chicago, packed, huge.
Yeah.
Kutzkus Hall, we'd play with, we played with the Vindictives, which was really cool. We played with Squirk on a bunch, then we played with all these bands that were kind of big. We played with 88 Fingers Louie once, which, we're going to see them tomorrow night,
Yeah.
So it was just really cool. We played Fireside Bowl, which is kind of this iconic bowling alley show.
That's in Chicago, right?
Yeah, so we made, but then when I made it back and, no super diss to Dave or Nikki or whatever, but
it wasn't for you.
It just, I got really, and everybody who's ever been on tour, even for a weekend, knows there's a tour depression that kicks in, and that was heavy duty. And I got a settlement from a bike messenger accident when I got back. I had a big pile of money waiting for me, so
yeah.
I just wanted to do anything but be in the Parasites when I got back from that gig. I just didn't want to go out anymore. They were going out. Dave McKenzie, who is in the Parasites, he's the Parasites guy basically. He just he's really into going out all the time, and he goes out too much. I think that's my personal opinion, but he would just constantly tour. He just tour, and I.
So you get back and you go, nah.
I'm just like, I'm cool, bro.
I need a break.
High five, yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.
Love ya.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and we stayed in contact. I eventually ended up going to Spain with them a couple years later, which was a really great opportunity. The best thing about that whole thing was just like meeting other people and just I met
making so many friends,
lifelong friends in these crazy places. Just a couple nights ago, I went to see Abolitionist, which is this great band from Portland.
Yeah,
the drummer is this kid Sean, who used to be in Plow United, who we played with in 1996 in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And we reconnected and big hugs, and it was like it was yesterday, and it was really fun. And that's the best thing about
getting out,
playing this kind of music, and just like I said before, your people, and and there's so much scene drama occasionally, and there's just all this other shit, but a lot of that goes by the wayside, and the real people kind of rise to the top, right? And those people stick around.
Yeah,
and
those are the people.
And those are the people.
Over and over.
Yeah, and there's kind of the flavor of the week, and stuff pops up and goes back down. But the real people have been doing it forever. There's a ton of East Bay people that I see around all the time. It's like Dave Henwood, who's he's been a drummer in a million bands. He's still floating around. He still plays music. He's still bartending in El Cerrito, You run into all these...
a lot of lifelong people.
Yeah, KT,
end up,
bro, KT.
Just putting their lives into this.
Just paying the dues, and it's their living. They're not even going after anything other than living. They're just like, flipping,
it's just part of what goes on.
Flipping that switch, just doing the thing that they have to do to be happy, and you try different things. I've tried a bunch of different things. I've tried living a bunch of other places.
Sure. Yeah. Well, outside of the Parasites, once that's done, you start the Heromakers?
Yeah, we started the Heromakers kind of like, I just wanted my own band. I wanted to write my own
singing, songwriting.
Yeah, just like, and I wanted a band, different, as bands work different ways. There's songwriting credit, there's this, there's that, there's publishing. I envisioned a band of like, I want a band with 3 friends. We split the publishing up a third by third by third. I can't play the drums like that kid, so he's going to get a third of the record because he can play drums super good.
Yeah, you can't play them the same time you're playing guitar either.
And I can't play them that good. So, and I involve everybody in writing, and I get, we involve each other in writing, and it's, it's more of what I wanted out of a band. That's it, like kind of my Pollyanna or sort of naive idea of what I thought music was.
And the Heromakers records one record?
We recorded one record, a big label. Our bassist had some connections through family. He's like a true artist type. Like he's like, I don't care about money, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'll starve to death, whatever. Dad made a couple bucks. Dad kind of was this old English gangster guy who moved to Hollywood and became a famous hairdresser, actually. And had all these kind of like wealthy friends, and they wanted to help, and somebody paid for a record, and we made it, and it sounded great. And just because bands are like dynamite. It's like sweaty dynamite. You know, it just doesn't take much to blow everything up, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what's great about them is the volatility of it, right? So it was real volatile. And my buddy Will is my best friend even still. He lives up in Portland, has this beautiful family. But at that time, we were having really hard time. We were all kind of in this one apartment and
recording this record, writing this record.
Yeah, like my wife and I and his wife and he, and we just like, she was about to have a baby. He was quitting smoking. My wife wanted to have a baby. This whole thing, it just was like a whole giant thing, which she eventually did. You know, it's like, it just turned into this whole deal, and it blew up. It was too fragile, and it flew apart, and we stopped
talking. And the Heromaker record never seen
the light of day. It just disappeared, gone.
But it was recorded.
It was recorded. We eventually we reconnected because he just called me one day. He's like, "This is really dumb. Like, why aren't we friends anymore?" I'm like, "I don't know. I can't remember." So we became friends again, and then we put the record out ourselves. Like right when that, you know, there was like a time in the mid 2000s when you could, all of a sudden there was just an ad on Facebook all the time. It was like, pump your record out, make 400 for $20 or whatever.
Yeah.
So we did that.
So you printed a bunch and gave them out to friends.
Yeah, and just gave them out to friends and stuff like that.
Can it be found anywhere online? Is it on Bandcamp?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think Will made a Bandcamp of it. I don't know. I should probably put it up. It's probably pretty dumb that it's not, but it's pretty great. I really like it. I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I liked what we heard there.
Yeah, it was cool. It's really young. Like I was really young then, and it's very like high pitched sort of, but it's really fun, and we worked really hard, and a lot of people really liked us. We didn't play that much in the Bay Area. We actually went on tour immediately. We jumped in the van right away and went out to Green Bay, actually. We drove out to Green Bay on this crazy bombing mission, and then our van broke down, and we barely made it back. But we toured a little bit, and we had a lot of fun, and it was great while it lasted, and it just kind of went away, and it was fun.
And then as the Heromakers fizzles, you make a move outside of the Bay.
Yeah, my wife at the time, she was a lawyer, and she got a government gig, and then 9/11 happened, and it was pretty heavy duty. I was working at Scuderia in the city. I'd really gotten into motorcycles then at that point.
And you're doing maintenance on bikes?
At that point, I was service riding. I was in service managing. So I wasn't teching then yet, and then we had the kid.
It was a good job.
It was a great job. We moved to Oakland, actually, and then I really wanted to learn how to technician for a living.
Yeah.
So we moved to Oakland in this really cool little house in the hills, and then I started working at Hayward Kawasaki, rest in peace. They start you out on jet skis because that's the shitty job, and nobody wants to do that job. But you learn a lot, and you just learn a lot about
the engines.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So, and I already been working on my own bikes my whole life, but it's a different deal when someone's paying you to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a totally different deal. So
you're doing diag work. You need to be precise.
You can't be scratching stuff. Yeah. You can't be breaking other people's stuff. They're paying you, you know? Yeah. Or if it's my stuff, I don't care. Oh,
yeah.
Oops.
Oh, drop that.
Oh, you know? So you learn a lot, and you just, you're under the gun a little bit, and it's good for you. And then, so she got transferred. She was working for the government. So after 9/11, her whole division got moved around, and so we got moved out to D.C.
And you take the move.
I take the move.
You head to the East Coast.
Brutal. Horrible. It's the worst. I was really looking forward to it because we'd visited there before, and so it seemed cool when we visited.
Yeah.
But living somewhere and visiting somewhere are like two totally different deals. And I just could never get my feet under me. I just couldn't.
Did you find work out there?
Yeah, not really. I mean, worked on bikes. I worked at dealerships and stuff, but it's really hard because it's so seasonal out there. California, you can work on bikes all year round. There, it's hard.
In the winter, the motorcycle season just kind of dries up.
Yeah, and so I started working on like small engine stuff, like chainsaws and snow blowers.
Husqvarna.
Yeah, Husqvarna. Yeah, exactly. Steel and Husky and all that. So that was actually pretty lucrative. That was I made the most money doing that. And I had other jobs. I started this company with these guys where we would drive to your house and put tires on your car at your house. I did that for
mobile.
a while. Yeah, mobile tire install.
Okay.
So that was kind of a cool idea. And all this stuff sort of predated the internet, so it was a little ahead of its time.
Okay.
But I just could never get my shit together there. It just wouldn't ever, and nothing ever seemed to work out. It was always hot as hell.
How long do you last out there in the East Coast?
I was out there for a long time. We had a kid, my buddy JP, my boy. So,
shout out.
Yeah, so I stuck around there for a long time, longer than I really wanted to, but I didn't really want to. I didn't live with them, but I needed to be around.
So you hung on the East Coast, you had your own place.
So yeah, and then I went to Baltimore. I moved to Baltimore, which was a little cheaper, but it was still close enough to DC that I could. They lived in Northern Virginia, which is right south of DC, so I could,
visit all the time.
Yeah, and they would come up, and she's Polish Catholic, so they went to a Polish Catholic church actually right by my apartment in Baltimore, and so. That was cool. And then she joined the Foreign Service, so she became a diplomat, so they'd shoot you off everywhere. So he went with her.
She's leaving the country.
Yeah, so she got a gig doing that. And at the whole time, I had kept my place on Guerrero Street. I was subletting just friends. And so I just
Mission.
Yeah, so I just moved back to the city, moved back to San Francisco. And then eventually...
After a couple years in Baltimore...
Yeah, a couple years in Baltimore.
A couple years in D.C.
We had like 5 or 6 years in D.C., a couple years in Baltimore. I moved back to...
Pretty good stint. So you moved back to SF. What year are we in?
We're talking like 2010, something like that, okay. 2011, not that long ago. And then we immediately got evicted. They figured out... I threw somebody out to move back into my room, and he narked us out for like the time that I had sublet the place the whole time. I'd literally been there since 1994 or whatever. It's the same apartment.
Well, let's take a quick break there. Sure. You've left the East Coast. You came back to San Francisco.
Back to the Bay. Yep.
And got evicted as soon as you came back. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about what you've done since you've came back to the Bay Area. Awesome. Let's talk about the band, the Hammerbombs. And talk a little bit about your bike shop that you own and run today out of Oakland.
Yep.
We're going to be right back. A little bit more with Rob.
Cool. Thanks.
What you just heard was Pay in the Morning by the Hammerbombs. And we're talking here with my guest, Rob Green, kind of talking about how his experience was on the East Coast, him moving back here to the Bay Area, and then shortly after moving back, getting evicted from your longtime home in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
So I moved to Oakland for a bit, to Chinatown, which was an experience with a really good buddy of mine.
And had an apartment there?
Yeah, we got an apartment. We went to court, and they basically were like, here's $10,000, and like we didn't really get evicted. They just gave us, they were like, okay. This was kind of right when everybody was starting to get kicked out, and we got this really cool like activist judge guy. So they gave us $10,000 and a recommendation letter to basically get the fuck out of our apartment so they can rent it for like $5,000 a month.
So you guys split this $10,000?
It was me. I was the only leaseholder left, so
it all went to you.
Yeah, it was just me and my girlfriend. So
you ran off to Chinatown with the money.
Yeah, we went to Chinatown, Oakland, which is pretty hair-raising experience, and then she moved to Denver. We broke up. She moved to Denver. This was the girlfriend I moved back from Baltimore with. She moved back to Denver. My buddy Aaron, he moved up to the North Bay, and then I moved to the Avenues with some friends. I was working back at Scuderia again for the second time in the city.
Okay, got your job back.
Came
there.
back, yeah. I'm just kind of trying to get, when you move back into a city from not being there for a while, it takes a minute to get your shit together and kind of get back on your feet.
So having the familiarity of the shop,
right?
Probably some,
just like old friends, but it was kind of weird. Like I moved back into my old apartment, and then I was in my old job again. It was a little odd. Like it's you can't go home again. It just didn't feel great. I felt like I had gone backwards.
Sure.
Felt weird.
You're right back where you were 10 years ago now.
It was kind of not great. So then I moved around a little bit. I went and kind of tried to like hang out with my ex-girlfriend in Denver for 5 minutes, and that didn't really work out again. And just kind of knocking around. And my best friend had moved up to Petaluma, this really cool like farmhouse. It was like a little tiny, crappy, creepy house attached to this giant, amazing workshop. So I just, we all have those weird times in our lives when we just like, oh God, I just need to retreat. I need to go underground for a second. I need to get it together.
And getting out there to the North Bay kind of.
Yeah, and it was just kind of weird. And I'm total city mouse to the core. Like I hate camping. Like I just don't get it. Like
Not an outdoors guy.
No, I just love like the city. I love concrete and glass and loud noises and smoke and shit. And so being out in the country was a bit of a shock, but kind of what I needed. And then right after that, my dad had a heart attack and died like super suddenly. So that was crazy. Wow. And then all this change sort of happened all at once. It was super nutty. And then
this is all going on between 2011, 2012.
Yeah, right in there. And then right out of nowhere, I got cancer, actually. I got stomach cancer.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, so that all happened within like 2 weeks. Just all this
And how was that treated, the stomach cancer?
I got, I was lucky enough. I had Healthy San Francisco at the time because I was using my brother's address. He still lived on Guerrero Street. So I got treated for that. Luckily, they caught it super early. Usually stomach cancer is like mega fatal, but it was an esophageal tumor. It wasn't a lower stomach tumor. So I got that sorted out. But I was still kind of working that out. It was still scary.
A lot had hit you at once.
Yeah, it was just shitty. And then in amongst all of that, I met my current girlfriend, Michelle. She's a total angel just out of the blue. I don't know. That was
kind of the light in the darkness there?
Yeah, but I didn't even know that. We just kind of hooked up. We had like a one-night stand, and it's just like still going right now. So it was like crazy. So yeah, so I met her, and we just, like I said before, the recurring theme, you find your people. And my best friend Todd at the time, and Aaron, they were both living up in Petaluma. And then Todd was having some family issues, and he had to move back. He had to move back to his native Lawrence, Kansas, to deal with his mom. His mom was kind of getting older, and so I was kind of dealing with the same thing. My mom had a stroke and had to be put in a home right after my dad's thing, and
wow,
in the middle of all the other shit that was going on. So I moved back to Oakland. I moved in with a buddy of mine in the Oakland Hills for a couple minutes, and then my girlfriend and I just got a place, and I was bored out of my mind. I have to work. I'm a busy beaver. I just I can't sit still.
You can't just sit around
and die.
Burn incense.
No, I had to get up and I rode my bike every day and I like worked out. I got in like amazing shape, best shape of my life, because I just was like, all right, I'm going to get this. It's not happening.
I'm going to work out. I'm going to
work it out.
Burn energy.
Yeah, we're going to get it going. So the only thing I ever known was working on motorcycles to this point and playing music. And I wasn't really playing music. There's been whole chunks of my life where like the music thing just kind of disappeared for a minute.
So you decided it's probably time to open a shop of your own.
Well, I just needed something to do.
Yeah.
So we just, I just looked around on Craigslist, and this really great kid, he was doing hand painted signs, like any of the barber shops or anything around Oakland that have hand painted signs, like Lane Splitters and like all those places. This kid was making signs, and he had a couple hundred square feet behind his shop. He's like, hey, I'm trying to find another person who does something totally different than me to
share the space.
Just share the space with me and just do stuff. And I emailed him like, hey, I kind of like, I'm in this space. I'm in this place right now. I don't know what's happening with my health, but I build bikes / fix bikes. I just envisioned building a couple of bikes, like buying some clunkers on Craigslist, building them and selling them.
Just reselling motorcycles.
Yeah, just flipping them or whatever. I didn't even know. It wasn't even a thing.
So you tell him this.
I tell him this. That's cool. My girlfriend was this is the first girl I've ever had that's also ridden motorcycles. So we were actually, right before this, we were looking for a much bigger space. We were going to really go for it. And which is crazy pants. I was sick. Who knows? I didn't know if I was going to live another 6 months or like until I'm 90.
And look into opening a big space.
Like, yeah, we were gonna pull out a monster loan and just try to basically open a dealership or something.
And roll the dice with it.
We're just going for it.
See what happens.
Yeah, we just got on this kick. We're like, oh, we're doing this. And so that didn't really happen. We spent probably 2 months working on the world's best business plan. We had our business plans fucking epic. And then the bank was like,
pages
the bank was like, this is an amazing business plan. We've never seen anything like this. This is great. Can we keep one of these to show other people how to make a business plan?
How they should plan it out.
Yeah. They're like, but you don't have any collateral, and that's the third leg of the stool, so to speak. So come back to us later when you have a couple bucks to kind of throw into the pot with it, and maybe we'll talk.
Yeah.
So we were kind of dejected a little bit.
So then loan.
So then I'm like, well, let's go small then. Let's just start small and see what happens.
Yeah.
So we rent a
mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
Time.
So we rent a couple hundred square feet behind this super weird sign shop. And like people would have to like push their bikes past this counter, and there's like, oh, this weird funky shit everywhere. It was really funny. I can't believe people even left their bikes with us. It's craziness. But I kind of could like talk a decent game, and people kind of knew that I knew what I was talking about right away.
Yeah.
You kind of know or you don't, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of started working on some bikes, and then it just sort of snowballed from there. And then Classic Bay Area get a notice one day, oh, we're selling this building. Everybody has to get the fuck out. So we're like, okay, is that it for our motorcycle shop? And then so we hunted around, and we got a spot in West Oakland where we're at now. It was just some guys. They make furniture for restoration hardware, and they're burners. You know, they're just like old school burners though. They make really decent projects. I'm not like a big fan, but whatever.
Yeah. Make some cool art.
But they're old school Oaklanders who understand the value of art and also understand the value of, you know, having good people around that are reliable, that do cool things.
Yeah.
And that's invaluable. And that's like the rarest thing ever right now.
So inside of this space, you guys open up Meteor Motorbikes.
Meteor Motorbikes. Yeah.
That's been there for 5 years now.
It's been there for 5 years.
It's been going well.
We've been doing great. You know,
family owned and operated.
We've had ups and downs. Yeah. Michelle, my girlfriend, she's the brains of the operation. She does all the homework and stuff like that. She's a really good technician too. She also has a different gig. She's also an accountant at a firm in San Francisco. So she does stuff there too.
She's watching the books.
She's doing the books. I'm doing mostly right now. We've sort of pared everything down. It's kind of a one-man show. I do, you know, well, she does work on the weekends and stuff. And we do, you know, I just basically have pared it down to sort of higher end stuff. We've got some decent Yelps. So I pull in like nicer higher end stuff. I don't have to work on the junk so much anymore, which is nice luxury.
Yeah, a lot of running bikes, a lot of servicing.
Yeah, just services and stuff. You know, that's where the money is.
Keeping
really.
people going.
Tires. Yeah. Commuters. we're right by the Bay
That's
Bridge.
what you want, yeah. Commuters,
Yeah, so
people
there's
that
a
are
lot of
working.
breakdowns, like, oh, flat tire on the bridge. Cool, bring it by, that kind of deal. I mean, that's where actual the money is, Diagnosing stuff or like any of that like custom back build bullshit, there's no money in that. Those guys are already rich or they're already out of business. Those are the two guys that do that. Like, that's how that works.
Well, that's a tough game, but it's good to hear that Meteor is doing well.
It's doing great, and it's also offered us the opportunity, again, punk rock and motorcycles. We've started to have some shows there. It's hard. The Ghost Ship fire happened right after we did our first show, so that was like kind of a damper on it a little bit. But since then, I mean, our building owner is really great. He's really cooperative, and he's he runs a business right next door, and he gets it.
So he's allowed you to actually use the space.
He comes
as
to
a
the
rock
show.
and roll venue.
Yeah, he comes to the shows and has a great time. And mostly we do these shows not to make any money or any of that shit. Oftentimes we lose money, and the format is we just want to put our arms around our friends and have these bands that come up from LA mostly. Sometimes they'll come down from Seattle or Portland. Mostly West Coast bands. Sometimes people come from farther away. We've done 5 or 6 now. Maybe a little more than that.
This kind of all ties in with you playing music again now
exactly.
with the Hammerbombs.
Right. So right as the motorcycle thing started, I started just kind of connecting. I started playing with this band called So What. I was playing drums, and we were sharing a room with Heartless Folk, which is Ilya and Jen. And we just got to talking one day. Yeah, that's their other band. That's like their hardcore band. And So What is more of like a proto-punk, like glam, kind of 70s bobber
And you guys
boy.
still play?
Yeah, I play drums with them. We just recorded last weekend. I'm not like quote unquote an official member. I'm like the home drummer.
You're a hired gun?
Yeah, I'm like the home drummer. Then they have touring drummers. And Derv Gordon from the Equals, he comes to the United States, and So What is his backing band as the Equals in the United States, and they tour around.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then Jason has Just Add Water Records. He puts out. We were in the Parasites together, and he used to put out like Screeching Weasel records and stuff like that, and Queers records, Queer Splits with the
So everyone's
Pink
got the
Lincolns.
super long history inside of punk rock.
And then they just kind of moved off into different category, and it's more of just like a proto kind of like English soccer glam. And he's gone to England and he's really gotten into the Equals. He's writing a book about the Equals actually, but in the process, he's met all these other guys from like these bands called like the Hammersmith Gorillas and stuff. Kind of the what do you call it? Kind of the roots of punk rock, basically. It's like proto-punk.
The first wave of all this going on in England.
Yeah, exactly.
In the late 60s, early 70s?
Yeah, exactly. And so he's kind of reconnected with all these guys, and now he's re-releasing some of the stuff that they put out in England back in the 70s that didn't really get that much airplay.
Oh, really?
And he's kind of reopening
Very cool.
this door to this whole other category of music, and it's really great stuff. So kind of like Judah is a really good... Judah is like an example of the type of music I'm talking about.
An intro to that style
yeah,
of music
like if you're into
that's
it,
going on here
Judah's
in the US.
kind of the biggest name in that category right now. But there's a million bands that are starting to do that. There's a bunch of bands from Italy and stuff. They're also from Italy, but
So What is sharing this room with
Heartless Folk.
You meet them.
I meet them, and I'm just ready to stretch my pop punk legs again. And I really just really want
picking up where Heromakers kind of left off.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just want to be in a pop punk band and write all these stupid songs. I kind of crank out all these like dopey songs, and I had a bunch of songs from. Actually, it's funny. The first songs we jammed on were the Heromakers songs that didn't make the cut for the record.
10 years ago.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have all these songs, let me try these out. And we just jammed on those at first. It was me and Jen Louie, actually. I got in touch with her. I'm like, hey, let's be in a band. And she was like, cool, because she's always down. She's so cool that way. And then we hooked up with this other kid, Rosh, who ended up not working out. He was the drummer. He's a good drummer, but just kind of a weirdo. And just you just
didn't fit the bill at the
just
time.
didn't work out.
Sure.
And then Ilya jumped on board. And then Mario Borzak, who's been in a million bands, crazy great musician.
Yeah.
Super sick shredder on guitar, but he's a really good drummer. He jumped in. He's like, yeah, I'll jam out with you fools. I was like, great. And so
and that's how it was born.
Yeah, super loose ship, always. Like that's kind of the whole focus of the band is to have fun and write songs where we can like drink beers and have fun and get super shit faced.
Play house parties.
Yeah, and like smaller shows. And the thing is, Heartless really did a lot of groundwork, and they toured around LA, and they went up and down the coast a bunch and just hooked up with all the kids down at VLHS and stuff. So they were sort of the serious hardcore band, and then they would just say, hey, we're also in this other band where we like to have some fun. And so people were really interested in us, and we were lucky that I'm lucky to be in a band with those guys because they really put the legwork in first.
To introduce you to everyone that's on the West Coast now.
Exactly.
Touring up and down.
Yeah, because I didn't really know any of those people. I'd been out of the loop a lot. I'm a bit older than those guys. I'm a good generation past them, and I was kind of out of the loop. And
so you start being introduced to people, SoCal, the people that we're familiar with, the Awesome Fest crew,
exactly,
the VLHS guys,
kids, yeah.
Marty, Ploy down there.
Exactly.
And they've all known him, but you connect with them right away also.
Yeah.
Doing Hammerbombs.
Yeah, exactly. And so we just had some fun. A couple years ago, we hooked up with the False Positives. The very first show we did actually at the shop was...
our mutual buds, the False
Positives.
Positives.
Yeah, love those guys.
Check them out.
Our brothers. Yeah, exactly. They played a show, our very first shop show. They played with... who was it? It was Moonraker, I believe. I think it was Moonraker. It was the first shop show, and it went swimmingly. And we had talked about going on tour a little bit with those guys, and so we're like, yeah, cool, that's fun. I didn't really know them that well. I knew Kevin a little bit from shows, and I didn't really know the other two dudes. And we ended up just being like fast friends. We're like brothers now.
Yeah,
we've been on tour
a
bunch. Yeah, they're amazing. They're killer songwriters.
Great songs.
Oh my God, so great. And we were really complimentary to each other. Their songs were a little bit more serious, but they were really just like Oakland at heart, and we were very Oakland, but we're drunky and kind of dopey.
So you hit it off. You do a tour with them. You also, there is Hammerbombs music available on Bandcamp now.
That's correct. Yeah, we have an EP, and then pretty soon, actually, already recorded, and we're just kind of polishing and rubbing the edges off. We're doing we have a full length that we recorded with Pat Hills
out there at Earth Tone Studios.
Pro, so pro. God, can't say enough about
Pat Hills. Yeah,
he's so good. He's so mellow, but I mean, he's just like it's prodigious when he sits there at his computer and just like clicking away. And
how many songs did you guys do out there?
I believe we did 12.
So Hammerbombs full length is coming.
Hammerbombs full length's coming out. Yeah, we got to. We've been trying to mix from afar, which is kind of tough. So we decided, we're like, all right, let's high five this. We'll just all go in one day and just knock this mix out. Because, when you give somebody mixed notes and you're not sitting there listening to it together, it's basically impossible to give them,
Everyone needs to be in the same room.
Yeah.
Or at least the band needs to be together listening to it.
Well, and the swings get too wide, right? You'd be like, oh, can you add a little to this? And then just because you're not there when he's doing it,
you might turn the knob a little too far.
Too much. Or not, yeah. And it's not his fault, and he's doing the best he can, and it's frustrating for everybody.
Is Pat doing the mixing also?
Yeah, because he's just, And the thing about Pat's studio is it's like his third leg. Like he doesn't, he's so connected to that space and how all the equipment works. That's the way to do it. I've recorded a bunch, and it's hard when it doesn't matter how good of an engineer you are, if it's not your space and you don't know it very well, or
it doesn't always have the feel.
Well, not only does it not have the feel, it just takes forever, and it just doesn't, like, you don't get the full effect. You don't get the full effect of the tools, right? You don't get the, I don't know.
You don't want the project skipping from studio to studio.
Yeah.
It's good to keep it at home with whoever's most familiar with the equipment.
Yeah, and you just want that person plugged in. You want that person to, like, there's always some kind of sniglet. There's always something that's going to happen. Some piece of equipment's going to break. You want the person to be like, oh, but wait, I don't care about that because I have this piece of equipment right behind it or whatever.
Yeah, that counters that.
Yeah, so if it's not your studio, that takes 3 hours instead of 2 minutes or whatever.
So the mixing's coming along though.
Yeah, it's doing good, and we're really excited.
When do we
about the
expect
record.
to hear that?
That's an excellent question.
This year?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely before the end of the year.
Months.
My birthday's in December, so what we like to try to go out and do like a kind of an epic weekend banger for my birthday. It was just December 11th. That was
you'd like to have the record out by then?
Yeah, we want to try to do that. We want to do some like record release shows. We want to go south. We've made friends with the Dodges. Those guys are really great.
Yeah,
we've had
recently
them up.
with the record out on La Scalera.
Amazing. Those guys are so great. And we've made, of course, with Jimmy and all those kids down in L.A. and Jimmy and Gabe and all the Tracy Soto guys, Andy Crisis and all those guys.
Sure.
So we want to basically just like roll down the West Coast and high five everybody and just play all our new tunes and put the record out and have a blast.
Yeah, pass around some copies of the new record.
Party time. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're really proud of it. Our EP's pretty great, and shout out to Tyler and Crack who made it. But the record just sounds a lot bigger. The other thing too is it's just a perfect example. It's like we were talking about earlier, just the growth. With just the Hammerbombs is kind of a party band, but we've also got the fun thing about it is we don't try super super hard, and a lot of times the magic comes out a lot stronger that way.
Sure.
In a lot of ways.
So the songs are still meant to be taken seriously.
Right.
Even though you might not take yourself so seriously.
Exactly.
While doing it.
Well, and there's a lot of ground. It started out as like a goofy drinking band, but then inevitably we live in a really high pressure environment where, nobody makes any money and we have to pay out a lot for rent, and that just comes through in the music. It's just hard times. Like making art in hard times that makes good art usually. Not saying it's super good. But
dire times add to the
well, and the other
mix.
thing too is a lot of the songwriting is split up between the four members. So a lot of times with that too, and there's a few songs that we wrote together. We try to write stuff together when we can. There's a lot of magic that can happen to that. A lot of times we'll just bring stuff, but we each have a different voice, but our voice fits within the box, right?
Sure.
So I usually write most of the kind of like goofy drunken songs. Ilya's really good at the breakup songs, and then Jen has these other, like, she does breakup songs too, but she also has these sort of like, she has a very strong female voice in a very dynamic and somewhat dark time, and she makes it fit within this kind of quote unquote goofy band. But her songs are to me, they're kind of my favorite songs on the record.
Maybe even the most important songs.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, probably. You could say that for sure. Well, yeah, no.
And she kind of creates this three-headed giant with you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everyone's adding.
Amazing. I mean, her. Yeah. I mean, so she. We all do good. And Matt, our drummer, is very much easily the best musician in the band. He does the little piano solo at the end of the song. He can play the piano and guitar. He's in the Rhines.
Adds those different
Rhines are
elements
amazing.
to the songs.
Shout out to the Rhines. I mean, they're great. So so it's a really great band that we try. There's been a couple times just for like 2 seconds when we tried too hard and it starts getting kind of like it starts losing the magic. It starts getting a little dark, and so you like get off the gas a little bit and just let it do its thing.
Let it
roll.
Breathe.
Let it roll down the hill by itself. It's
go.
a lot more fun, and it's just, everything comes out better. So
you got 12 songs that should be coming out here by the end of the year. You got hopefully a tour planned by the end of the year in December.
Yeah.
Upcoming also, you've got this Sunday with Naked Aggression. You got some big shows coming up. Where's that at?
That's going to be at the Golden Bull, the lovely Golden Bull. So right after church at Naked Aggression. Just kidding.
There you go. Yeah. And then you've got a show coming up, Bottom of the Hill with Sloppy Seconds.
Yeah, that's really excited. Yeah, we booked that one a while back. You
can hear some influence in some of the early Heromakers songs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Sloppy Seconds, we got that call. I don't remember. There's this guy Landon who does a lot of shows in LA for some of the older like legacy bands, and so he's been doing Sloppy Seconds tour, and our buddies the Drowns, your friends and mine, the Drowns, they're doing the Northwest leg. I don't know why they're not playing the SF show. We've been kind of browbeating the booking people, like, come on, let's get the Drowns. Those guys are great.
Great band.
They recorded at the same time we did at Pat's studio. So we got a little sneak peek, and of course
I've heard some of that record. Yeah, it's really good.
Right? Yeah. Oh man, and Rev's amazing, and
Andy,
and of course you've got Jake from Shellcorp just destroying the drums. What a super group, right? They're crazy. So.
Well, we got their record and your record to look forward to. Meteor Motorbikes is going on their 5th year.
All right.
Any shows coming up there? Can we expect? You said about once a month. You guys are throwing the DIY shows.
We do shows once a month. We try to keep it mellow. The last couple shows. So we had our 5-year anniversary show with the Dodgers came up for that. That was really great of them to do that. And You're the Fist and Crimson Ghostbusters, which is this hilarious like throwback 80s mix-up band with the Misfits, which are hilarious. And then we just did the VLHS Kids came up. So we did kind of 2 sort of rowdy shows in a row. So we're
kind of back to back.
We're going to take a little break for a minute. I think the next show is going to be an acoustic jammer just to kind of, bring it down a
Where
notch.
can our listener find out about shows going on at the shop?
We try to be
probably kind of hush.
Yeah, because of the ghost ship stuff, and there's actually people out there on the planet right now that hate fun and just try to
There's a lot of people like
for
that.
no good reason other than to be an asshole is to shut that stuff down, which is horseshit.
It's tough.
It's the worst. What are you getting out of that? So, we're not doing anything. We're not hurting anybody. We're not even bugging our neighbors. Our neighbors come down and enjoy it,
Yeah, and have a beer with you guys.
Yeah, it's really cool. So Jen Louie always makes great tacos. I always buy a grip of beer and we come down. You can check out...
maybe find Rob on Facebook.
Yeah, find me on Facebook, or you can find Meteor Motorbikes is on Facebook.
Okay, and you guys will share the
Sometimes
events.
we do that on that.
Up.
Yeah, right beforehand. That way we don't, we try to keep it low key. It's kind of turning into a word of mouth thing. And if somebody wants to hit me up, just find me on Facebook. Actually, my Facebook name is Rob Solete, like obsolete.
That's why I thought it was a Solete.
Yeah, Solete. Yeah, no, it's like a joke.
There.
It's just sort of a joke that got out of hand. It's not that funny.
Rob Solete.
Yeah. So just hit me up on Facebook or just hit us up at Meteor Motorbikes and we can move there. Or Hammerbombs, the Hammerbombs.
Yeah, follow their Facebook page.
Yeah,
check them out on Bandcamp.
Yeah, Bandcamp. We got a Bandcamp going. We got Hammerbombs Drink All Your Beer is the Instagram, so check us out there.
Find them there. Check out Meteor Motorbikes. I think you got a lot of good things going on. It's really interesting to hear your story. I think it went a lot deeper than I had expected, I guess you could say.
That's good. I think that's fun, right? That's kind of the whole point of this podcast, right?
Totally, yeah. I really like to connect
much.
the dots with everybody and just kind of show the work everyone's put into this scene, and it's really it's exciting to see people that have pushed harder or as hard as a lot of people that I know, and to go, man, this guy really has devoted a long part of his life here to making this kind of stuff happen. So I want to thank you for coming on today.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it was really fun.
It really was a pleasure. Any parting words, any final words you have to some of our listeners? What would you say to the up and coming musician, the up and coming booker? Someone.
Yeah.
What do they need to do it right?
My thing is go to shows. A lot of that's. I think that's what shocks me the most because of the internet. Because it's so much easier to put shows on now. There's a lot more bands. I think the talent is better. I think there's not as much dilution of talent. I think stragglers aren't really allowed anymore because everybody's trying really hard. The missing ingredient is people going to shows.
The audience.
Yeah, you don't have to go to every show, but try to go once a week, once every 2 weeks even. That would make a huge difference. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been in the Golden Bowl. And you can't help it. Some people just book a tour and they end up in the Bay at the wrong time of day. We were talking about this earlier. But sometimes, okay, it's Monday and it sucks and you had a terrible day. But, if you live in Oakland, the Golden Bowl is guaranteed 5 miles away. Jump on your bicycle.
Come on down.
Give them $10. Your coffee costs $10 in the morning. Yeah. Give some guy $10, it's going to make the difference between them getting to Portland and getting to Portland with a coffee themselves the next day, right?
Yeah, come out and see the bands.
Buy a shirt.
Yeah.
Buy a $2 Bandcamp download or something.
Have a little fun. Don't be one of those people that wants to break up these shows.
And
right?
Exactly. And you don't have to see every band. You don't have to stay till midnight. Just
no one's expecting
that.
No,
just come and just get into it. And you don't. Your favorite band played Monday night at Golden Bowl at one point in their lives. You know what I mean? Come see your new favorite band. I can't tell you how talented some of these kids are. I'll come out and just Julio from Between Your Teeth is doing shows at Uptown now. He's doing backyard shows now. And the last one they did, it was insane. Say Vende from San Diego. I mean, just destroyed, and
reunions.
Yeah, reunions. I mean, I'd never really seen them before, and they blew it off, dude. It was crazy great. So I don't know. I think
go out and see a show.
Yeah, the talent right now. I mean, we're in a golden age of punk. For me, I feel like. I mean, and I've been around for a minute. I'm an old fart. I've seen a bunch. And there's everybody's good. You don't even really see clunkers anymore. So go to shows. I'm asking everybody. Suck it up.
I think it's a great message, and I think, like you said, you took us from the late 80s Gilman all the way to the Golden Bowl today here in Oakland, and I think you share a great message inside of what you've done, inside of your career in music. So once again, Rob, I want to thank you for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. This is episode 17 of 80 West, wrapping up. We'll catch you guys next time.
See you later, kids.